Hello, this is Mary Ann Franzese, and welcome to Radical Democracy. Today, the host of the show, Maddie Cheers, isn't going to be here, so I will be in for her. My name is Mary Ann Franzese. I am the CEO of Spark Elementary School in Lindenhurst, New York. I'm also the principal there. And today we are going to be talking about radical literacy. So, what does that mean? Basically, literacy has always been used as a opportunity for freedom and expression, but it's also been used to oppress and keep people from critically being able to understand issues, understand their rights, be able to fully be informed and make choices that would benefit them. So, as far as we're concerned, literacy is one of the most important tools we can really give a child to be able to express themselves in the world. So, today I'm here with the co owner of Spark Elementary and also my sister, known at Spark as Miss Rosalie. Hello, Miss Rosalie.
Hi.
So Miss Rosalie is not thrilled to be here. She is a behind the scenes kind of person. I'm the one who's always out front and doing the talking, and Rosalie works and works and works to make sure that all of our curriculum at Spark is really operating according to the highest principles. But most of her time is really spent developing and being dedicated to our literacy program. And our literacy program is a difficult program to implement, right, Miss Rowe?
Yes, it is. It takes a lot of time
Because
and work.
what Rosalie has taken a stand for at Spark is that every child is looked at as an individual with their reading needs taken into strong consideration about the kind of program they receive. And every child at our school is read with individually 4 days a week, and with an adult who is really assessing where they're at, because the statistics right now in the US are a bit alarming. 1 in 6 children, by the time they reach second grade, are not reading with full comprehension. And from third grade up, children are basically reading to learn. So that means if they haven't established their foundations, they automatically start falling behind, feeling like they can't really catch up. By fourth grade, if a child is still below grade level, is not comprehending what they're reading, it becomes very, very difficult for them ever to catch up. So we make sure from the ground up that every child is being watched carefully, but most importantly, listened to, not only for how they're reading words, but are they in fact understanding what they're reading. I wanted to start with a quote I found. It's by John Steinbeck, and he says, "Learning to read is probably the most difficult and revolutionary thing that happens to the human brain. And if you don't believe that, watch an illiterate adult try to do it." What do you think of that? Right?
Yes, it's true. It's a tough process to learn.
And everybody learns differently.
Yes, and that's so important because really, basically, your assessment of the children that you're working with really should drive your instruction. And if something is not working, then you have to figure out a way that will meet that child's needs. It's not that they can't do it. It's really kind of you as an educator figuring out, okay, what do I need to do to create a plan, a right plan for this child to learn to read.
Right. And it has to start in elementary school, that kind of dedication. And look, there has been a lot of talk about literacy, a lot of literacy programs implemented, literacy as as a priority, no child left behind. And yet, this blew my mind, Ro. I was looking at
Yeah.
some of the statistics in the US because people are still not learning to read. So that means there is some fundamental gap in what's happening. So, current statistics say that 14% of the population in the United States cannot read.
Wow.
That is about 32 million adults.
Oh my gosh.
21% of these adults read below fifth grade reading level. So there's a whole other group that's just below grade level. 19% of the United States high school graduates cannot read. That
It's
means they got
horrible.
to 12th grade.
Right.
They've come through the system,
System. Mm-hmm.
and we're losing 19% of them. That's a crisis. That is a problem. Now, this is where it does become a social justice issue because it is directly linked to a person's ability to really have a good life. So, 85% of youth who are in the juvenile court system are illiterate. So
Makes
that's
sense.
it. A kid gets in trouble, they're gone. 70% of inmates in U.S. prisons cannot read above a fourth grade level.
Wow.
So reading is linked to this ability to really have a place in society. And you know it firsthand in the sense of Rosalie's history. She comes from 20 years in the New York City Board of Education school system, right, Ro?
Yes. And I primarily, I did work a lot with, schools sometimes that were being taken over by the state because of the reading levels were low or, children who were struggling a lot. And I think that's where I come in with my sense of urgency, how important it is to start literacy, teaching them to read at an earlier age,
Right.
and to kind of get them through that system. But it's important to teach them how to do that in the right appropriate way, but there also needs to be joy with it, and the sense of belief that they can do it, and happiness around it as well as the
So
instruction.
you started out in the classroom,
Yes,
the elementary
teaching,
school
yes.
classroom, and then you became a reading specialist.
Yes.
And that was in the New York City Board event. So you were kind of at the start of really the focus on literacy and training with different methods.
Yes, I was. I was lucky enough to work in a great school district where we were provided with a lot of different training and different methods that were coming into play, a balanced literacy approach, all the different approaches of how. And then I was trained in reading recovery, which was another wonderful program developed by Mary Clay, where you're working with one-on-one children in first grade, because their whole thinking was you have to get these children young, because then in first grade they need to learn how to read, because after that it gets harder to break the habits of what
Which
they're
is
not
what
learning.
we're seeing with
Right.
statistics.
So basically, yes, so that training was wonderful. And then I kind of wanted to go back into the classroom to kind of implement what I've learned on this one-on-one program, because I was saying it works great with children who are chosen to be in the program, but how about all these other students who are in the classroom? How could I apply that to whole class knowledge of what I learned? So I started doing that as well, and learning different techniques that I learned, individualize and put them in the whole classroom.
Now, I know you're very humble, Rosalie, but that work led you to becoming a distinguished teacher
Yes.
in the district because of the reading program that you were implementing in the classroom. And that was as one teacher dealing
Yes.
with how many kids?
We had like 28 to 30 children.
In a class, and you were reaching them.
Yes, and I primarily, all my teaching experience, most of it is really inner city, where children didn't have a lot of home support, but it really didn't matter, because if you have good high classroom support, that's all really they need to achieve and do well. So based on that, and then that's how then I went into a school that was going to be taken over by the state because of the scores were so low. So that's where I implemented the program from kindergarten through second grade, and I was there for like 3 years. And what happened as the students were learning to read in kindergarten and then in first and second, they got stronger and stronger as the grades went on, and their scores improved. So it was this sense of really starting program on, starting early on, but also the consistency of reading every day and writing every day, because I think that's the key that children need to be read with every day.
Yes, and I remember when you were chosen to be the teacher mentor and implement this literacy program where you had to start working with teachers. Um, I remember the resistance because it takes a lot of planning
Yes, it's a lot.
and a lot of interaction. So it is not something that is done without tremendous investment in the program.
Yes,
So
100%. You have
and the other piece, which I want to go back to, working with inner city kids, and you were in the pre-K programs too, right? From
kindergarten.
kindergarten.
Hmm.
So, working with the inner city, here you were working with students that, right, did not have high parental support.
No, none at all.
You had a large majority of the children who had neurological difficulties, such
Correct.
as attention deficit
Yes.
and the inability to focus. And there was, it really took a lot to keep their attention.
Yes, correct.
And do you feel like that helped you to develop a program that would engage the children?
Yes, you know what? It's very true. I always would tell them, like, we can't waste a minute of learning time, and they kind of knew that, and it was at a good quick pace, like a nice pace that we would always do something. And yes, and you do make things come alive, like especially in kindergarten. So it's a lot of poems, of singing, of chanting, of doing different techniques of learning. If something is not working, then we try something else. So it's lots of different activity stations that they would work with as well. And so it is so much engaging. So there's time where they're working independently in small groups, or you also have whole class lessons as well.
And so, out of your time there, you actually were then recruited by Scholastic
Yes,
to
yeah.
write your program, because here you were in schools that were at risk of being taken over by the state. You were implementing your program across the grades, and the data supported that your students were not only learning to read, but loving to read.
Yes.
And that's where Scholastic came in. And what were the books that you wrote for them?
I did one primarily book, Reading and Writing in the Kindergarten Classroom, and that came out of, because within this program where I was teaching at, we had a lot of visitors coming in with the cooperating teachers that I was working with, and the principal. They were all wonderful in that school, so everyone was on board, and we would have visitors coming in, and someone had come in from Scholastic to watch. So I did that first book, and then I also did a second book, which just was kind of like breaking down all the different learning centers or stations, reading stations that I've done. And then my last book was a poem book using the sight words, because what I found in my teaching was that there weren't any poems that children were able to read, especially early on in the kindergarten grade. So I would always make up and create my own poem. So if I wanted to teach them the word "the," I would write a poem that would have that. And then if I wanted them to have "go," I would write it. But my poems, what happens is, I would always use the passwords that they've already known. So it's kind of like a succession. So again, they're practicing the familiar and rereading what they know. So it's always going back to that and practicing, because they need to have that stability and the fluency of it. So I created this poem book that it kind of has this succession order of teaching all the different main sight words that you would use in kindergarten, and also first grade too, the beginning half of first grade. But primarily it goes through the whole year of kindergarten.
Do you now, it's many years since you've been in the New York City Board of Education, but were you able to ever get any feedback of students later on and how they did?
You know what? I did actually. I have a story. It was actually one of my first years of teaching, and you know, you talk about like instruction and how they're doing, but it was my first year of teaching, and I actually wasn't in an inner city. I was in the city though, and I did. It was like in the village I worked, and I had this one little girl in my second grade class, and I remember the first year of teaching, I was like, I think back and I'm like, oh my God, that was like the worst year. Like I did everything
First year
wrong.
teaching is
I was like,
such a
yeah, and I was
mess.
like, I did everything wrong. That was horrible. I didn't even know. And I was on the train. This was like, I guess, gosh, it must have been 15 years later. And I was on the train coming back home from my job in Upper East Side. And this beautiful 18, 17-year-old girl came over to me and she was like, are you Miss Franzese? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, Mom, Jasmine from second grade. And I was like, oh
Aw.
my gosh, Jasmine. And I said, oh my gosh. I said, and I remember she was such a great writer. I do remember that. And she goes, I just want to let you know that I always still love to write. And I remember how you told me what a good writer I am and that I'm still writing. And you gave me this special writer's pen and I still have it. So it was kind of like, for me, I learned that it's more important to kind of be positive with the children and really believe in them and love them and really feel their good strengths and qualities versus I thought that was the worst year of my teaching career. Like, oh God, what do these kids learn? Like, I don't even know. But that was what she took away with that. So,
Well, and that is so key, and it's certainly what we've built Spark on, is that true belief in the capability of every child and their ability to shine in all aspects, but especially reading.
yes.
One of the things that when we were starting up Spark, we I was talking to you about creating an academic assessment for criteria for our students to come into the school, and I had said to you, you know what, Ro, let's figure out some kind of a assessment that we can base our, acceptance on. And you took such a beautiful and strong stand with me, and you said, yes, it's important to assess a child to know where they are. We will put that together, but no one's entrance into our school will be based on the scores of an academic test.
Yes.
Because we will take them where they are and we will make sure they grow and learn. And that just brought so much into focus for me
Yes.
because it is not about, okay, everybody has to come in at the highest rate. Come where you are.
And we'll teach you.
We'll figure out what's missing,
right.
what you need, and we will get you there. And that is the foundation of belief in the possibility that each child has to learn. And I remember last year we had a kindergarten who came in as way, way, way below level.
Yes.
And we were basically told he will never learn to read.
Right.
Miss Rosalie was like, really?
Yes, exactly.
We'll see about that.
I don't believe that. I think
And
every
within
child
a year,
can learn. Yes.
the way he blossomed.
Yes, and he loves to read. I don't, right, and that's the thing. I do not believe that. I don't believe any child is lazy. I don't believe in any of that stuff, that they can't do it. It's a matter of the responsibility of us, the teachers, the educators, to figure out a plan that will work for that child.
Right, and there are, there's right now, I would say there's 15%, I was reading, of students have some form of reading disability, which is also very, very high.
Yes,
It's
true.
a high statistical number. So that means, what does that mean? That means that they are going to need assistance in really developing their brain in a way that they will be able to read. And so I know that you approach that without fear. It doesn't seem to rattle you when you have a student who can't read.
No, because I know that there's so many. What I really love to do is I love to learn every technique that's out there. So I do, and I love people who create different programs, and I kind of read and research, and then I'm very eclectic to kind of pick and choose, and it's almost like you think of it as like a prescription, almost like what will work for each child, and it's different for everybody. It could be the norm, maybe it'll work this way, but then there might be one or two. So it's kind of exciting in a way for me to kind of figure out what would work for that child. So I do pull from a lot of different resources to create an ideal individualized program for someone, especially who's struggling. And and I think it is, you create that program, but it is the consistency of not fly by night. If I'm going to read once a week, or they're going to read, no, I'm very strict when it comes to that kind of stuff, that every child needs to read every day.
Well,
So, and
I've seen that too in our school.
I'm kind of like, I won't, so that's important, that everyone needs to be met, needs to be read with, discuss what they read.
Yes.
And constantly checking constantly. How does that book work? Did that not work? Let's change it up. Let's, pick it out, a new one. So it's constantly checking on what they're doing, the students.
And I really believe that that is your pillar of social change, because Spark Elementary is really about revolutionizing education in the sense that we're incorporating social, emotional intelligence into everything we do, and helping a child to really learn about who they are and learn their academics. And that's kind of my piece I bring, right, as a creative arts therapist. And the piece that you, again, took a very strong stand for. Okay, it's one thing to say a child is going to be read with every day, but a teacher in a typical school has 20 kids. They do not have 5 minutes
No, they don't.
to read with each child every day. And so what, again, you really insisted on, if we are going to do this, then we need to create a reading lab.
Yes,
And
correct.
so that has been something that is probably one of the most magical spots in our school. And I say that because, first of all, it's beautiful.
Yes, it is beautiful.
Second of all the people who work there, all
Yes.
the adults are so happy.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids go down to reading lab with real excitement. So what is a reading lab? What is our reading lab?
Okay. So it is, like you said, beautiful. It is like this cozy place, very inviting to kind of come in and read. And we do have all of our different leveled books there, and every child gets their own book basket. And in each week we plan for everyone individually. So every child's on a different level according to where they're supposed to be at, and then we hand select and we hand choose the books that they're going to be reading for that week. And every week we'll change it over. We'll discuss what's happening. So they'll come in and they get to read with a mentor or coach. And the child will read to them out loud. Some, maybe they'll read they'll read a page inside their heads and then discuss about it. But it's a kind of like this nice conversation that happens as they're reading with their mentor, with their teacher, or a coach. And they're making sure that they're comprehending what they're reading, because, some children can read, all the words, but if they're not understanding, then that's not reading. Or as well as if they're having some struggles trying to read, we'll kind of prompt them and help them figure out strategies that they can do to figure out the words. But it's, again, always checking on the meaning and having these conversations. And also we too add a writing component as well. Not every day, but like twice a week, or 3 times a week, they'll kind of work on summaries and talking about what were the main things that they read. So we're making that reading-writing connection as well. So it's so nice. And then the team of people that we do have, they'll work with the same child maybe for like 5 weeks, and then we switch off. So you want to kind of have everyone kind of getting a sense. They might stay with that child and they finish their chapter book that they're working on. And then we also they do read when they go home. So they'll read, let's say, the next chapter that they're working on if they're reading on level or above level, and then they'll come back and discuss it with their coach. Or if they're reading just, very early leveled books, they'll reread the books that we've read with them. So it helps them bring fluency and phrasing when they're reading at home.
And now this is another area where at Spark we have a no homework policy.
Yes.
Because basically what studies has shown us is that homework creates more stress than good in family life. And so when I brought that to the table, Rosalie said, well, reading will still occur. And we kind of went back and forth about it a little bit, where I said, but we're really going with a no homework policy. And Rosalie, you stood up and once again said, reading isn't homework. Reading is life work. And I thought that was so beautiful because exactly to go home and have your book and to have a parent reading with
Yes.
you and to start to experience reading just as the way we brush our teeth every day. We read twice a day. We read at school, we read at home. It is just what we do to stay healthy and strong.
That's so true, and I think too as well. So the practicing of the reading, but also the team of reading teachers that we have in the reading lab are wonderful because they're so. They all have the same philosophy as we all do in Spark. So they're so supportive of the children. They get excited if the child is reading more fluently than in the past, or if they're moving up to a next level. So everyone's invested in each child, and it's so nice to have that team where we'll meet on a weekly basis and talk about what they're noticing. Or it could be that moment where they're reading with someone and the reading teacher will come over to me and say, this is not a right choice, let's pick a different book, and they'll take that child to the reading closet and pick out something else, or they'll let me know, we need to go drop it down a level, this is too hard, or raise up a level. So but it also is that encouraging spirit that the children are so comfortable with reading with each other.
It goes back to relationship.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That it doesn't happen by just speeding through things or creating exercises or following someone else's program from start to finish. Reading with someone, you start to form a relationship. And a relationship that, from my perspective, is very emotionally intimate because you're sharing your opinions on stories. I know I've seen some of our reading coaches I've passed in the hall, and they look up at me and they're like, oh my gosh, this is a third grade book and it brought me to tears. And they're crying and they're sharing experience and how they relate to it and how the child relates to it. And so it creates a culture in which it is not about who can get to the next level quickest. Mm-mm. It is reading as a means of connection.
Right, that's so true.
And conversation.
Yes.
That conversation is carrying the story further, and conversation about books takes you to new levels of critical thinking, of critical analysis. And that goes back to really this idea of radical literacy, is that we're at a time right now where we could read things that are written. There are a lot of things written on the internet. And we need to become critical readers. We need to be able to have questions about what we're reading and to have conversations about what is out there to come to a sense of truth and understanding. And it begins right there in these partnerships that I see happening in our school. And really this space where reading is honored as a pathway, right?
It is.
It's at a pathway. And again, I think it's because of the spirit in which you've created this. When we first started 8 years ago, I really remember our early classes being very hung up on what letter am I on, right? When am I going to get to the next letter? I hear none of that anymore.
No.
It's
more about the book choice. It's so funny because it's more about, I don't know if I want to read that book. I don't like that book. Or if I select a book, let's say for like the 4th or 5th grade that I think they're going to like, and they'll be like, no, I don't. So they're now going in and selecting their next book. So it's more about the content of the book and the choice of the books for them.
And they're also becoming independent and really recognizing what their criteria is for a good read.
Right, yes.
Because we all have our different styles, our genres, what we're most comfortable with.
And I think, too, there isn't any fear. It isn't any fear-based, because if you think, like, afraid to read aloud, or they're going to make a mistake. There's none of that. Like, there isn't any anxiety coming into play or fear,
And
even for
that,
our lower end readers as
right.
well. Like, it's not.
Well, and that's what I would say is um, our first level of approach with any problem area
Mm-hmm.
for a child is that dignity is first and foremost. A child's right to their dignity, to not feeling ashamed or embarrassed of
Yes.
where they are, but also not pretending where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able
It's
to
true.
sit with the child one on one and say, okay, it is true. You are behind the other students in your class, and this is the plan we are going to use to get you to where you need to go. Partner with me, we will get there. And that's the mindset of having that sense of we will never put you in a position that makes you feel embarrassed about your skills.
No, it's so true. And I think, too, like, I know I do believe that you start, literacy early on in the grades to kind of, like, especially with the kindergartners and maybe even pre-K now, they start. But we take a strong stance too with parents who want to push too fast. And that's something that we don't believe in. Like, you have to, like, we don't rush up levels. I don't rush up levels, especially on the early on. They have to have a strong foundation. So I'm kind of, you know, really I hold to that. Like, they have to read quite a few number of books on a specific level before they're moving up, or rushing them to move up a level. Like, that's not, right as well. We have to make sure that they've mastered that level as well. So I think, too, we kind of as well have to explain to parents, like, it's okay. They don't have to rush up these levels. We'll get them to where they need to be, but in the right time.
Right. I remember one parent came up to us at one of the parent teacher conferences, and she said, my daughter struggles with reading. She's below reading level, right? She definitely has a reading disability. But she said she never complains about reading. She loves reading.
Mm-hmm.
She looks forward to her reading homework, and she has an older daughter who didn't quite experience that in the early years of education, and she saw the marked difference
Mm-hmm.
with a child who can in fact struggle and still love reading.
Yes.
It's not a contradiction.
No,
It shouldn't be.
exactly.
So I'm struggling, but I still love it because
Right.
I'm reading these books that are either hysterical or I could relate
Mm-hmm.
to or have relevance.
That's so true.
And so the love can be there.
And that's a big, I think it's one of the major things in learning. You have to have love for it, and no stress that goes with it, and the
Right.
belief, and you have to, and that's key too, is the teacher who is teaching you, they have to, children know when you believe in their value and their worth. And so I know that every child is going to learn. I don't have to say to them, but they can kind of feel that in the
Oh,
way I'm doing it.
completely.
So they know that you have this belief in them that takes them along, and that's part of it. That's why they do learn.
Right. So it starts to develop a real sense of self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And that really goes back to, part of those earlier statistics I talked about in the show, where our kids who are in the juvenile system, they never learn to read. Like, that sense of the partnership, having that type of mentor who, because where else in our curriculum do you really have that level
So
of
true.
partnership, that opportunity for guidance and partnership outside of the reading?
No, it's so true. And then you think, right, you just need one person to really make a difference for you. If you
And
think in life and believe in you.
and tell you a story from their own
Right.
life and connect you.
Right. And it gets you on your way. It's so true.
I want to talk a little bit about our early literacy program, because we start at 4 years old.
Yes.
And our 4-year-old program, right now, there is a lot of opportunity for creative expression in the 4-year-old program, and for Montessori kind
Yes.
of learning, for our Reggio Emilia creative inquiry. But our literacy program offers something that I see as very unique, because it is not about just learning how to form letters, say letters. It is about my sense of what you're doing, Rowan. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's about engaging the child's most powerful strength at age 4, which is imagination and play,
Yes.
and channeling that into learning how to read, learning how to embrace letters, right?
Yes, exactly. It's all about fun and laughter and joy. It's so much joy with it.
So one of the things Rosalie does is she has these guests who come
Yes.
from Letterland,
Uh-huh.
and we hear screams coming out of the pre-K room when Rosalie is announcing who
Yes,
the
they
next
love it. They
visitor
love
is
it.
going to be. And then what she does is she gets our teachers from the upper grades to dress
Yes,
up
yes, we do.
and come in as a visitor from Letterland. So there was one day where for G, they were doing G, and they had Lady Gaga. We hear them all
Lady
screaming,
Gabby Gaga.
Lady Gabby Gaga's coming. I'm like, Lady Gabby Gaga's in the house? Who's Lady Gaga?
They
I
do,
was
they
so
love
excited.
it.
I thought we had Lady Gaga coming. But it was our Letterland Lady Gaga.
She comes in, and they do, and the teachers in the early childhood are awesome. They go along with me all the time.
They dress
They
up, they
Catherine.
sing, they act out the Joy Cowley big
Yes,
books.
they are constantly active. So everyone just kind of chimes in, and they love it. And you know what? It's funny because they learn the letters, but even for the children who, let's say, come in and know their letters already, let's say, they're not bored. It's like they're so excited and happy, so it brings like just more joy to them as well.
Well, and this is what I'm realizing actually as we're talking about it out loud. It is again creating relationship
yes, that's
with
so
the
true.
letters.
Right? Yes,
They are now involved with these letters.
and
these
they can't wait. Is it someone else coming from Letterland? Who's coming? It becomes like
And
this whole.
it allows the imagination to open up to, there's this place where all letters come from.
Right.
And they're visitors and they're friendly and they love us and we love them and we play together.
Yes, exactly.
So this creation. And then the other thing I hear coming out of your room is singing. And
Dancing.
Parties.
Always dance
Like,
parties. You gotta have a
what is
dance
going
party.
on in the early
You have
childhood?
to have a dance party. They love it. Just the movement and the dances and the songs and their jokes. And they're so funny and joyous and happy. Oh,
And what,
them.
and really what you're doing is utilizing a complete multisensory approach, which is movement, song, dance, opening their ears, their eyes, a sense of taste, because you bring snacks in too that go with
yes,
Letterland.
that's right. We do. Or
Healthy
little
snacks.
Healthy. Or little
So-
presents that go with it. And they love that.
Yes.
Why not?
So lots of joy, a sense of just emerging into this land of what is this all about?
It's the best.
An
it's the best
adventure.
yes, and it's the best time. Well, I love it so much. I mean, it's just such to see their little faces so joyous and happy and wanting to learn. It's the best.
And then as we see our kindergartners start to take on reading and really work.
Pre-Ks too now are starting.
All right, our pre-Ks too. So their first
Yes.
encounter with books.
Is starting now. They're doing and they get met individualized too. I mean, we have like 18, but we managed for them to get met with one-on-one with the early level books and sight words with it.
So those beginning books, beginning to learn how to navigate a book
Yes,
from cover
right.
to cover. Our kindergartners and our pre-Ks, part of their readers, we have the grandmother program.
Yes, that's right.
We have Grandma Mary and Nanny Neville
Yes, Nanny Neville came in. She came in
She's
too.
reading too.
To the upper grade. She
She's
comes
with
in for the upper grades.
But this idea of intergenerational readers who are
Yes.
trained under your method of prompting and connecting and hearing about the children's response to what they're reading sets it up from an early age to really love and be with their
And
books.
it's nice, especially in kindergarten, because they get to come out of their classroom and have that special time with Grandma Mary. So it's sitting there, and it's such a comforting kind of a situation that you're setting up with them. They get met one-on-one too as well, but they talk about that. It's such a nurturing type of relationship, which it promotes this learning, and they get so excited. It's that kind of positive feedback that you get right away. And if they want to know when their turn is, like if someday if we're running late or something, like when am I going to be taken to read, like they ask for it, or or if they didn't get taken yet, they're like, when is it, if we have to take them in the afternoon. So they look for that time, they
forward
want
to
that,
it.
and they can't wait to get the next child. They run in when they get called to go in. So it's this happy time for them that they come in. It's their reading time that they love.
Yes, and it really is because of that mutual exchange.
It is. You
Right?
get to know-
There
Yep.
is the giving and the receiving that's happening, and it just breathes life into this amazing and powerful skill that
It's so
they
true.
need for their whole
Yes,
life.
it is so true, and you're right. It is engaging conversation because yes, they are reading and they're talking about the books and the new words they're learning. But it's also, how are you doing today? How was your weekend? Tell me, is something going? And they'll start. It's conversation. It's also as well, like you said, that personal relationship you're developing.
Well, and I started my professional career as an English teacher.
Yes, that's
I
right.
was in junior high school and high schools, and part of what I really learned from those years in the school, and I was working in the Bronx, I was working in the city, but was that being an English teacher and working with story just connected my students to their own story,
Right, that's
to
so
their
true.
own sense of narrative, being able to tell a story, being able to read a story, to tell it, to understand it, are the steps of really turning to understanding your own story. What's my story? How do I tell it? And then, how do I want to rewrite my story or revise it? It's a sense of thinking, really, of thinking in terms of story.
Yes.
There's a beginning, there's a
Right.
middle, there's an end. There are funny things that happen, there are difficult things that happen. There is usually conflict and resolution, and how does that tie back? And at Spark, one of our big missions is not only getting a child to read on level and above, but also to be able to read themselves. And that's what you're really talking about when you're saying that it goes beyond just learning the skill.
Yes.
Our partnership, our mentor program is also about the mentor receiving the child and reading where they're at, right? Helping the child to read themselves and be able to communicate that. And it becomes this really kind of nice metaphor
Yes, that's
for
so true.
what we're all about, right? Read yourself,
Right.
and then you'll be able to read someone else.
That's fantastic.
right.
That's
Where
right.
are you
right.
at? Where am I at? So this process of connection through the word, but literacy is not just about reading. It's also about vocabulary and word study.
Yes.
And one of the skills that are really getting lost in this age of technology is spelling,
Yes.
because our words are corrected as we type them in. And that has I think it does, Ro, correct me. It has a lot to do with being able to process sound and then how that translates into writing.
Yes,
Is that
yes,
the process?
yes,
Is
there's
it a
different-
more auditory process?
Right, you hear the sound, and then you have to get that sound and then transfer it over to the letters that match those specific sounds.
And I know that you have been working very hard with our language arts department in creating a whole new word study program
Yes,
that
yes.
really is taking our children to a new level of being able to sound out and write words.
Yes, I have been. And I really, I've been through a lot of training with all these wonderful programs that are out there. Like I am a Wilson certified teacher. I went for that training, and I also went for training in Norton Gillingham, and as well as Linda Mubel. So those are all different techniques where it's really a phonetic based program to teach word study, especially with children who have learning disabilities. And actually, it's great for children who have any type of processing problems to help them spell and write, especially with children with dyslexia. But I also think that it's a great program for anyone to learn how to spell, because you're learning the way our words, our language works, and all the different sounds and rules that are made up of our English language. So my theory was, I kind of was really studying all of these different techniques, and I see it being done again with this individual way of doing it, just like when I was doing reading recovery and then the one-on-one program trying to apply it to whole class. I kind of have been this year taking all of these different techniques and learning from it and try to implementing it within a whole class situation. And so to kind of taking what I think was the best out of all the systems and following this kind of phonetic, a systematic way of teaching about how to spell different words and the sequencing that these programs do. So kind of implementing that within the classrooms for everyone, not just for children who have specific learning disabilities. And so it's not really, they're words they don't have to memorize anymore. The only words that you have to really truly memorize are the words that you can't phonetically spell, which are the sight words. You have to think of ways to kind of mnemonic devices of how to remember those. But all the other words, 2-syllable words, 3-syllable words, they could spell because they're learning all these different parts of it. So no really word is difficult because you're learning all the different components of a specific word.
And again, that is you are involved in a very creative and systematic process of how do we reach children in this area of the curriculum where it is a difficult challenge.
Right.
And spelling and the way people spell is an important skill to have and a freedom to have. It just stunts your whole process if you cannot access the word, write the word.
Right, because it also reflects. So if you could write the word, then when you're reading, you can learn how to take apart that word as well. So there's such a connection between that, the writing, the reading, and the spelling. So you want to kind of, incorporate that. So so I'm, trying to just figure out what works best for the classes and seeing all the techniques that are out there already and trying to kind of a combination of implementing different components.
That one of the teachers had come into my office. Friday is spelling test day.
Oh, yes.
Miss Kara had come in and she says, I just want to let you know that everybody got 100 on their spelling test
they're
this
doing
week.
fantastic.
That there's really a shift. I said, that's amazing. And I took a look at them. I don't often get to see the tests the day they're taken. And they're hard words.
They are.
It's hard. I think that's amazing.
Right, because they're breaking them down. So so it is. It's lucky enough to have all these good programs that are out there. So that already have been established, but I'm just trying to kind of figure out the best.
Well, it's funny. We
it.
call Miss Rosalie, and our resource room teacher is Miss Jen. We call
Yes.
them Lucy and Ethel
Yeah.
because they are always coming up with a new literacy program training that
To
they're
go
off.
to,
They
always.
go, they get all the information, they turn the whole school upside down
Right,
and
that's the
training
key,
everybody.
because you can't
keep
stop
it alive.
learning. You have to keep learning, and then you see what works. So I'm always pulling from everything and trying to say, oh, that'll work here, that'll work, because everyone does. There's a lot of great work out there.
The work is wonderful.
Do.
Let's take the best and figure it out and make it and spark it up.
Yeah, spark it up. Right,
spark it up. So it really is, even for the teachers, opportunities to feel alive in the development of new ways to reach children.
Yes, exactly.
Like that's it, not being so locked in to you must follow this way. If it is not working, like you said earlier, it is our responsibility to figure out why and to trust ourselves as authorities. We
Yes.
can figure this out. Let's
And our
go
teachers,
to it.
yes, and our teachers are very much like that. Like, this didn't work, let me try this. Or if I might suggest something and they say, well, this may work better, then that's, we try it. That's what we have to do.
Yes, absolutely. And so, literacy in this country has long been used as a method of social control and oppression, because if we think about it, prior to the 1900s, only privileged white men learned to read and write because education wasn't free. It wasn't for all. And even in 1833, I came across this when the slaves were free. There was a law that was made that it was against the law to teach any person of color to learn how to write or to read. Now, what does that tell us? That reading is dangerous. It is dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because people, again, if you can read, you can understand your rights. You can organize. You can rise up. Literacy has power.
Yes,
It has
certainly
a
does.
lot of power. And Frederick Douglass, who came out of that time, taught himself to read secretly because it was against the law. And he said, I thought this was such a beautiful quote. He said, once you learn to read, you will be forever free.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I also
Love
think
that.
about that in terms of
I love that.
reading as a freedom, not just of your rights, but as a freedom to escape. In a position of suffering, you have a book.
Yes.
It will take you to another world.
It's so true.
If you don't have anything to do, you have a library filled with these books that take you on adventures.
And if you need to learn new things, like you have those resources to help you.
Yep.
In anything that you need to do.
And women too were left out of the education system and were not a priority until the early 1900s. So think about where we've come as women, Miss Rosalie.
Yes. All right.
1900. It's what, 100? It's 119 years ago. What the heck? We have just been on the rise. So with that, literacy as a true means to freedom, to expression, but also to joy. And I think that really in having this hour to talk with you about this, what I really come down to is there can be no fear in being able to teach children to read. And it has to be planted in this soil that is just rich with opportunity for connection, expression, mistake, and joy. And then it's forever a gift.
That's perfectly said. That's exactly.
Isn't
your
that
words
nice?
Are
So
beautiful
you really
I love
are
that.
an agent of social change.
Oh,
Did you know
no,
that,
I
Miss
didn't
Rose?
know that. That's perfect. That made my day. That's true. That's true because I'm so.
And let the revolution begin. Let's get every child learning to read.
I love that. Yes.
And
Amen.
if an adult has gone through the system, it is never too late to learn. Come join our classes.
Yeah,
we will help you out.
Yes,
anytime with dignity at the forefront.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Totally.
So with that, radical democracy, everybody has the right to an education and a dignified one and the opportunity to learn how to become conscious readers. With that, we close our hours. Anything you need to say, Miss Rowe, before we close?
Great job, Principal Marianne.
I know you were a little nervous,
I
Miss
was.
Rosalie.
Well, thank God you were here.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, until next time, next week, Maddie Cheers will be back. We hope you have a good read this week.
Yes.
And until next time, be well.